TOA family, welcome in to another episode of Sound Supply. I am your host, Eric Huber. Happy Monday. Happy summer. And guess what, guys? That's right. Another brand new shirt. Got the lemons on today. Beautiful day here in New Jersey. New setting. If you guys haven't, not a lot has changed, but you may notice some changes. I just moved to a new location. Really excited. But nonetheless, more excited to talk about commercial AV with you guys. I don't have my mic stand, so I'm going to be holding my mic here if you guys don't mind. Looks a little bit more natural. But I do need to get my stand up here so I can use my hands more freely. So bear with me here while I work my computer and talk to you guys about commercial AV. So today's topic, it's summertime, obviously. We've talked about education, and I want to discuss how you can utilize this time, during the school's break or the educational institution's summer breaks, and move forward in upgrading or simplifying, optimizing, whatever that may be, focusing on the K-12 market. Now, this is a market that tends to be a later adopter when it comes to education and technology. An example growing up, before I hit the collegiate level or college, you go from the old school projectors and the slides and all those cool things to all of a sudden using email on a daily basis. And that plays in part where, how much difficult it is to teach somebody younger on how to use a certain system or product or interface. But today it's much, much different because technology has gotten much more powerful, yet the front-facing end user interface, or where the end user is actually switching on a button or pushing a button or interacting with a product, has become much more simpler. So there's less of a learning curve for the end user. And we're going to talk about just 3 simple things while also tying in safety, right? And, every day you guys watch the news, COVID's like a seesaw right now, or the pandemic currently is like a seesaw, excuse me. And we really don't know what the future holds, unfortunately, when it comes to the safety of us, the safety of students, the safety of people in the workplace, basically where our equipment is being used and integrated. So we want to keep that in mind at all times. All right, so I want to stick to simplicity when it comes to what the end user wants in terms of how they want their system to operate or how they want their system to work. We have to look at the educational end user as the simplest form of interaction with our products. They simply want one thing to do a certain function, whether that be turning a system on and off, raising the volume, selecting an input. Those are just 3 of the main things that these people want. They don't want to go in and program things. None of that is necessary. They have full-time jobs that they're focused on, and we want to make sure their interaction or their introduction or their daily use of these products is as simple as possible, right? So there's, 3 things to think about this when it comes to simplicity for the educational K-12 market. Number 1. Less is more. And when I say less is more, let's talk about, since we're a hardware manufacturer here at TOA, let's talk about hardware, right? Let's talk about Lenubio, right? A single piece of hardware that could do multiple things. And this is where the market is going, especially in software, where now you have one entry point, one piece of software, and in this case with the Lenubio, it's hardware that could do multiple things. In the Lenubio's case, it's an I/O device, meaning that it receives audio or receives an input as well as outputs a source as well, all from one single chassis. It's also an audio interface when it connects to your Mac or PC. It's sending and receiving audio over a single USB cable. That's as simple as we get here at TOA, and we're going in that direction with a lot of our products. But that's where a piece of equipment like that was indeed intended to be designed. Think of successful technology companies out there. We could talk about Apple. We could talk about Microsoft. Technology is getting simpler and simpler and simpler for the end user. And there's actually a great example here, and we'll talk about those two companies. When it comes to desktop computing back in the day, I'm sure a lot of you guys or gals are older than I am. But I did grow up with MS-DOS in the 90s and late 80s. I was a young guy. I was only 6, 7, 8 years old. But you would have, in order to tell your computer to do something, you would actually have to type out a message or a code or a piece of line text to be able to even open a program. This has evolved with Microsoft Windows and Mac OS to a point-and-click system where you're just virtually, you're pressing one button, and the same concept applies to the end user when it comes to commercial AV. Yes, on the back end, these products are very powerful. They can be fully programmed and optimized by the integrator, by the professional on a different level, right? So a lot of these pieces of hardware, like our 9000, for example, very clean-looking interface up front, purposely done for a set and forget type solution. But under the hood, accessible to the right people, it could do so much more than that. And we all know that. That's just one example. The A800D series is another example. Take a look at our mixer amplifiers with just volume controls on the front panel. This is done for a reason. So when it comes to the suggestion that I just made with the Lenubio, less is more, right? Not only in the design, but how many pieces of hardware are you adding to the setup or installation? Think about that, especially when you're dealing with the K-12 market. When you got kids involved, you have teachers that don't have the time to learn. There's many, many, many different things. And this is just to make sure that you guys don't get phone calls down the road and everything is just smooth sailing. You just have to say, hey, push this button to do this, push this button to do that, click this mouse to do that, boom, and you're good to go. With simplicity in mind, we want to think about point number 2, and that's leading into what I just talked about, is not only do you want to make sure that the people that you discuss this product with can easily operate it, but anybody else. And this is where it gets a little tricky. Not tricky, but always keep that in the back of your mind. For example, Mrs. Johnson calls out and a substitute teacher walks into the room. There's a Lenubio set up. You don't want to receive a phone call on, hey, how do I use this? How do I do this? How do I do that? No, negative. You want to make sure that person, anybody, could be anybody. It could be little Johnny, who's 7 years old in the 2nd grade, or Mrs. Johnson's replacement, who's in her late 60s, and she needs to get a conference call set up as quickly as possible. I think this is something that can easily be missed when integrating and designing a system, out there in the real world, where you're just maybe talking to one person. It could be the IT guy whose level of knowledge is here, when in fact the person that's operating the system's level of knowledge is down here. You want to make sure you fill that entire spectrum when you're integrating those systems. And last but not least, number 3. So we want to also make sure that we're taking advantage of the technology at hand. On the back end, we as integrators need to understand what that solution is offering for us in terms of how do we make it, or how do we program the unit to be as easy as possible for the end user. And this is where automation comes in. This is where macros come in. And when I say that, macro meaning a one button push can do multiple things. It could be an input select, like on a 9000, how we have our scene selections. You can select scenes. In each scene can be programmed to do multiple things. That's just one example. When it comes to controllers, let's say you're using an Extron type solution or some type of interface solution that's using an iPad or something super simple that's doing multiple things at one time, right? So if automation or macros are available, by all means use those. You want to make the 5-button press a 1-button press. And with today's technology, there's always a solution for something, as long as you dig in there, take a look. But you want to, at the end of the day, this whole thing, when it comes to upgrading or optimizing or installing new systems for the K-12 market, is painless. Let's make it as painless as possible for everybody involved. Principal Johnson down to little Johnny, who's 7 years old. You want to make sure everybody in that building can use that system to its basic functionality, which in turn is its 100% operational capacity for the end user. And that's it. I think if you guys are out there integrating for the K-12 market, there is a huge learning curve or a huge gap in knowledge between person A to person B, person B to person D. It's huge. And it doesn't have to be difficult. It doesn't, with today's technology, as long as we're utilizing those things. So think about macros, think about automation. Less is more. And I use this in like my life. I've been reducing things for the last couple of years, and it's just been so much easier just to live more simply, yet harness the technology out there. And that's the beauty of it. That's the world that we live in. And every day there's new updates coming out. Please take a look at our website. We're always, optimizing things, whether that be firmware updates or software updates. That's the beauty of software. It can constantly be upgraded throughout time, which is just a beautiful thing. And going back to the point of safety, we want to harness some technology, and this would be dependent on the school itself. When we're integrating AV equipment, especially when it comes to audio and video, we want to make sure there is a bridge with some sort of emergency system. That could be a shutoff. That could be a routing option to maybe display a message. So this is another point that I'm bringing up where less is more. Try to integrate these systems with emergency systems. Why add another monitor when we can use the monitor in Classroom A to output a message, or the audio system in Classroom A to output an emergency announcement? Let's think about a touchless-based solution. The world is going in the direction of voice activation and AI technologies from the big players out there. There's options for that. We get calls on it sometimes, and it's definitely very possible. People want to come into a classroom and maybe just use their voices. Maybe they don't want to touch a monitor. How about this? How about we allow control of a system with somebody's own personal device? This way, nobody's sharing a device, right? Options are out there. So you have voice-activated systems, which completely eliminate the use of touch. You have the option to use your own personal iOS or Android device to walk into a classroom and turn the system on. This is great for teachers or the people in charge of the systems or the people operating the systems. Maybe we have personal listening devices on our own personal smartphones. These are things that if they're not in play, they will be in play very soon. And you just want to make sure, and this varies from region to region, to state, to school to school. We want to make sure we're meeting their needs as best as possible. We want to understand their needs. Always understand the customer no matter what. At the end of the day, that's what matters. All right, guys, that's all I got. Again, thanks for joining me in my new space. We are back at the office, by the way. If you guys have any questions, give us a call. We are on standby. We have a webinar coming up in 2 days, this coming Wednesday, leaning into this topic. Myself, Dan, and Ian, I believe, are on that. Jim's on vacation, so I don't think we're going to see Jim. Jim, enjoy yourself if you're out there. But anyways, hopefully you guys are taking some time off, enjoying yourselves this summer. And again, we'll see you on Wednesday for the webinar. And every single week, make sure you check out our podcast here on Sound Supply. It's my pleasure to bring them to you. And again, we will see you next time. Take care.